Welcome to Layer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss Alice in Chains and their 1992 album, Dirt. I made a video about grunge and my feelings on grunge, and I talked about how when I first heard a lot of these early grunge bands, it felt to me like a return to classic metal, like 70s style metal. And the big two of grunge for me, there's really only two bands from the grunge era that I really like. One of them is Soundgarden, who I did a video on their Bad Motorfinger album, and I talked about how that really had a 70s Sabbath down-tuned vibe to it. And the other band that I really like is Alice in Chains, and this is probably my favorite album from them. And when I think of Alice in Chains, even compared to Soundgarden, I think Alice in Chains has even more of a kind of traditional metal type sound. Like for me, like a 80s type sound. Maybe it's Jerry Cantrell's guitar sound or the type of riffing that he does, which is just great. He has a really kind of thick guitar sound, and he has all these really dark sounding, evil sounding riffs that he plays. I love Lane Staley's voice. He has such a unique voice. The way when he sings in his lower register, he has this kind of intensity to it. And I love when he goes up into his higher register with that sort of grittier sound that he has. But what really sets Alice in Chains apart, outside of the great riffing from Jerry Cantrell and Lane's unique voice, is their use of the vocal harmonies, the way Jerry and Lane sang together, where they sang a lot of harmonies, or Jerry would even sing a line and then Lane would come in, or they would then harmonize over each other. And to me, it's almost like they created their own signature sound with those harmonies, and it runs through practically everything that they do. It's a really big part of their sound, and I think it's really cool. It's a really unique thing that from the minute that I heard them, that was something that really jumped out at me, the way they use their vocal harmonies. You know, it adds sometimes like a certain amount of like unease and dissonance to the sound that I just think is really cool, and it adds to the atmosphere. So this album was produced by Dave Jordan, who had a long history of producing records even back into the 70s and the 80s. He worked with all kinds of different people, and I think the production on this album is just great. The copy that I have is a recent reissue of this on a label called Music on Vinyl, and it just sounds fantastic, man. And this is a pretty long record. It's like 57, 58 minutes. And for those that don't know, typically with vinyl records, you don't want to have much more than 20 minutes on a side because it can start to affect the sound quality. It has to do with the amount of grooves and the space you have on the record. So this is a single record, but it still sounds fantastic, being that there's like 25 or so minutes of music on each side, which is usually a recipe for disaster. But this record sounds great. In fact, I'd say that this sounds better than my CD copy. And I have my original CD that I bought when this came out. But this sounds really great. A lot of nice low end. The mix on this is just perfect. I mentioned this already, Jerry's guitar sound is just super thick. That's just a word when I think of him, you know, the way when he's chugging down low, man, it's just got a thickness to it. And his lead guitar sound is real, it has a certain sound to it. It's not really bright or anything, but it jumps out of the mix. We also have Mike Starr on bass, who this would be his last album with the band. This was the second Alice in Chains album, Facelift being the first. And this would be the last album with Mike Starr on it. His bass sounds great on this. You can hear all his bass lines and the little fills and stuff that he does. Sean Kinney on drums, and he sounds great also. The entire mix is just really a great mix, and it sort of ushered in. I remember when I first heard Soundgarden and I first heard Alice in Chains, the mixes were they felt drier to me. We had just come out of the 80s when everything was all big, really boomy drums, like electronic style boomy drums with a lot of reverb on it, and just a lot of reverb on everything. You know, you think of like the later 80s Def Leppard records where they're just very reverby and washed out. And I remember hearing Alice in Chains, and it felt really like kind of right there in front of you, you know, much drier, and just, but it was still really thick sounding. The drums on this, like the toms on the drums and everything, they're big sounding, but not in a big reverby Def Leppard kind of way. You know, they just sound like they were mic'd like in an old school way, like a room reverb type of sound, which is just really awesome. So the unique thing about Alice in Chains for me, I mentioned already the vocals and Jerry's guitar sound, is their songs, man. The mood that I get when I listen to Alice in Chains, it really, you know, if you read the history of the band, Lane Staley was in and out of, you know, he had drug problems, and I think when he was making this record, he was sober around the time of this record, or he had just gotten out of rehab or something like that. But he was battling like serious drug addictions. The other guys, some of the other guys in the band, like Mike Starr, was battling addictions too. And this record just, I can feel it in this album, the way Lane sings some of these songs and his lyrics. Like, I love a Sick Man. I love the main riff in that. It's like this really tight chugging riff, and then they drop down into like this like slower feeling, and just the way the lyrics are, and you can just sort of, you get this vibe that he's singing about his addictions and his problems and what he's going through and experiencing, and that song's a good example of it. And I love, there's a part in that song where they're chugging along, and he does this does this repeat thing on the vocal. It's so like evil sounding, man. And again, these tempo changes where they go from this super tight and choppy thing to this loose and kind of wavy thing, man. It like spins your head, which to me is just really cool. Another song in that same kind of drugged out vibe is Godsmack. It's got this really weird, I don't know what it is, like a weird guitar harmony, or the way the sound of the guitar in that intro riff, it's just so strange. And then Lane's voice has like some kind of effect on it that makes it sound real warbly, like he's down. The way he's singing, it's just like so demented or something, man. It's really great. He has such a unique voice, even in his lower register. The way he enunciates and sort of phrases his words, I think, is really unique and really great. And then, of course, there's the songs on the album that were... there's also, too, in this sort of this drug-inspired vein, Junkhead. You know, it's another one where the lyrics are just like, you know, really kind of messed up, and you feel like you're in, you know, Lane Staley's head for these songs, and it just sort of puts you in maybe where his mindset was at that time. And sadly, you know, the addictions would get the better of him, and he would pass away. So you got the songs like that, and then of course you have the songs that were the hits, the radio, or the MTV songs, and the songs got played on the radio. You have Down in a Hole, you've got Wood, and you've got Rooster. Those were like the three big ones on here. They also had video for, I believe, them Bones and Angry Chair, I believe, also had videos. So this album did really well for them. It sold, I think, like, I remember reading it was like 5 million copies. They got like a Grammy nomination and all this. You know, they got a lot of recognition for this album, and in my opinion, very very well deserved. And so a lot of the record also has a really like doomy, dark like vibe to it. The down tuned guitars, the heavy riffing. You know, I mentioned down in a hole. You know, the down in a hole. It's just sort of grinding along. You know, or the same thing with the song Dirt, you know, the title track. That's another one that has like a real Sabbathy 70s riff. And it's like descending heavy guitar riff. Hate to Feel is this sort of same vibe. Then there's stuff like Rooster, which sort of has a ominous like feel to it. Yeah, they come to snuff the rooster. Yeah. You know, I love when Lane, he does those lower things, and it's, oh yeah, when he goes into his upper range, man, it's just like, wow, man, it sends a shiver up my spine. So Rooster has sort of that dark, like, feel to it. Down in a Hole kind of has that too. Wood definitely has that. There's that creepy, sort of ominous bass line in the beginning of the song. And here's a great example of their background vocals, where Jerry sings the first part, "Know me broken," and then Lane comes in, "By my master," with the harmony, you know, over the top. And then the way it kicks in and gets heavy into that, you know, Lane takes over the lead there, man. Just, oh, great. And Lane's guitar solo, Jerry's guitar solo in that song is just fantastic. Oh man, it's like, he was a guy that he certainly had technique, and he sort of soloed like an old school kind of 70s guy. You hear him using like wah-wah and effects like that, and kind of the bluesy and the bends and everything. I also love Rain When I Die. That one has this this wah wah guitar part that's like really bluesy and sort of elastic feeling. You know, that's another feel that Alice in Chains does really well. And there's another thing in that song too that they do a lot in Alice in Chains, where Lane just does these like, yeah, and the guitar doubles like that same thing. Like the guitar is playing the same lick and Lane's singing along with him, yeah. And they do it too in Angry Chair, which is another one that I really like on this. Little boy blue, down and down, yeah. Where Lane will sing right along. The guitar will do like these really like slippery like bends, and Lane just will sing right along with them, and it's just, oh man, it's just so cool. So this album is just packed with awesome songs, man. The opening song, Them Bones, it's a great, you've heard me talk before about songs that are in odd meters. This is a great example of it. This one's is in 7, which is really not a common meter for like in rock songs and heavy metal songs, but this is yeah, 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 you know, and they make it work, man. It grooves in that chugging sort of guitar from Jerry. So this is just a great album. The cover for me even just sort of sums up, you know, the feel of this record, being dragged and pulled, you know, down below or something. And then the back album cover, you know, it's sort of a trippy picture of the guys in the band. You know, this just sort of sums up the whole muddy, dirty, being sucked below vibe of this whole sucked down vibe of this whole record. So just a great album, one of my favorites of the grunge era, right up there with Bad Motorfinger that I did before. A super heavy record. If you haven't listened to this record in a while, don't let the grunge tag scare you away from this, because this is really just metal, man. This is doomy at times, doom. So don't think grunge, you know, because I know grunge is often put in as like anti-metal thing, but not on this record, man. Great guitar playing, great playing all around from everybody on here. Lane Staley, amazing vocals. So if you haven't listened to this in a while, check it again. Check it out again. It's an album that I've really been digging. If you want to get a vinyl copy of this, get the Music on Vinyl version that just came out not too long ago. It sounds fantastic. So, all right, there you go. One of my favorite albums from the grunge era. Let me know in the comments what you think of this album. What do you think of Alice in Chains? Is this their best album? A lot of these songs got played a lot, but man, they still sound great when you crank them up today. So, all right, let me know what you think. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. And until we see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.